is in good supply and ready to go. Oh yeah, the American spirit is absolutely in full supply. If by American spirit you mean ghosts. Because we're turning out ghosts like it's 1918, baby. We're positively swimming in ectoplasm right here. I'm telling you, if you could wipe your arse with ghosts, the American people would truly want for nothing right now. The thing is, all this talk of Americans being brave warriors seems designed to make us accept.
That's the definition of my name.
Prevent, and yet, this
The name
administration
Madison
seems
means
at
brave
times to be
warrior.
actively hostile to
A
those
little
prevention
fun
efforts.
fact about my name.
On Thursday, we learned this.
As the president urges states to reopen, the CDC has prepared a draft roadmap to help restaurants, schools, churches, and others to do it safely. But today we learned the White House has rejected that draft.
The Associated Press, who was first to report the administration's hold on the guidelines, saying a CDC official told them the agency's scientists were told the document would, quote, never see the light of day.
Wow. Never see the light of day. It is hard to imagine just how draconian that is, or at least it was, before never seeing the light of day became the only thing on all our schedules. Honestly, tell me,
fucked up
what
the
does
air
sun look like?
conditioner.
Does it have cool shades and an attitude, or is that just something that we made up in the past? Because I sincerely can't remember. So this is where we are right now. Our wartime president has decided the only way to win this war is to draft every one of us, hide our battle plans, and hope that we're all brave enough not to notice that we've already surrendered. Or to put it much more succinctly, and to quote what seems to be one of his favourite songs, his plan to steer us through this pandemic is for him to live while letting a lot of us die. Now, this.
And now, Fox 4 Dallas' Steve Eager reads viewers' complaints out loud.
Next, the ongoing parade of people complaining about others. Millicent says she is in mental field and doesn't like seeing people wearing gloves. Next, Mark in Weatherford wants some landlord love on the news. Why is it assumed the landlords have no bills to pay and they are rich? William wants somebody to wipe down credit card keypads he's about to use. Eric now has a deep cover. Lonnie is sick of seeing sick people. Wendy lost her mind. Finally, some people just seem to be complaining to complain, and they don't really know what's up. Like this one from Colleen. I would like to know why
fucking for real right now?
Mark in Weatherford wants some landlord love on the news. Why is it assumed the landlords have no bills to pay and they are rich? William wants somebody to wipe down credit card keypads he is about to use. Eric now has a deep state cover. Lonnie is sick of seeing sick people. Wendy lost her mind. Finally, some people just seem to be complaining to complain, and they don't really know what's up. Like this one from Colleen. I would like to know why you all only show the negative. With this virus, you know damn well this is a ploy to destroy our country from the inside. Why are there so many people outside today? Why don't you...
Honestly, like, that's all very... It's honestly a little bit haunting. Like, a little shocking.
Now, this.
Okay, wait.
And now, Fox 4 Dallas' Steve Eager reads viewers' complaints out loud.
Next, the ongoing parade of people complaining about others. Millicent says she is in mental field, doesn't like seeing people wearing gloves. Next, Mark in Weatherford wants some landlord love on the news. Why is it...
Why do we not also remove their property tax burden and property mortgages also? I do actually vaguely remember like this weird thing about people who have money that were kind of like, well, what about us? Kind of like, yeah, but I'm losing my multiple properties. And I don't really give a shit if you lose one of your 10 fucking properties that daddy gave to you. And I also don't care if you fucking are upset about sacrificing your annual vacation because your family just needs to get away for a little while. Like, fuck off. Don't we all just need to get away for a while? Wouldn't that be just nice? Like, fuck off. What?
Landlords have no bills to pay, and they are rich. William wants somebody to wipe down credit card keypads. He is a...
However, the keypads all have to ask the stupid questions in order to use your card. All a potential to spread infection with each and every contact. No one is cleaning these after each sale. Why not? This is also super legitimate question. I used to get made fun of because in high school I used to use my sleeve to touch buttons or to open doors. I had hand sanitizer on me at all times, and I used to get made fun of super bad in high school for this. Not even kidding though. It's like, ask people I went to high school with, literally, this is the true thing that I used to get made fun of for walking around with hand sanitizer on me at all times, and I would offer people hand sanitizer. Like, y'all are fucking nasty. Like, I still do it. And now I see people going back to, like, just fucking la-di-da-di-da, fucking people, like, literally sneeze without... I don't know if you've ever been on a fucking public transit and someone behind you fucking sneezes without fucking covering their mouth, and you get their debris on the back of their neck. They usually seem to react the same way. I turned around, I was like, dude, the fuck? And he was like, like, that was pre-COVID. That was pre-COVID.
To use. Eric now has a deep state cover. Lonnie is sick of seeing sick people. Wendy lost her mind. Finally, some people just seem to be complaining to complain, and they don't really know what's up. Like this one from Colleen. I would like to know why you all only show it. The negative with this virus, you know damn well.
That's why I used to watch The National every night. The National at the end of every segment, or at the end of every episode, would do a nice story. They're like, after all the horrible stories we just told you, we're going to show you something very heartwarming. And I was like, that's lovely. That's great. That's lovely. My big question was, why is it up until COVID, all the other countries, like they're trying to say Korea did a better job at COVID than America. But anytime any numbers come out of anywhere, any Korea, whichever one, no one believes it. And they say they're probably fake numbers, but then when it works in their favor, now they're like, we should be more like Korea? Odd. Because they did so well during COVID. Like, but every other time that they give us numbers for anything, they're like, oh, it's a fucking lie. Those numbers are a lie. It's Korea. You can't believe anything they say. They're the Koreans.
Oh, this is a ploy to destroy our country from the inside. Why are there so many people outside today? Why don't you report about
I went outside every day. 5.5 months of curfew. I went out did 14 days, and then I went out every day, and the cops actually let me, because I would chalk at night.
Animals can still get grown. This is a slap in the face to humans. Stephen Eager is a sick man.
In all fairness, what that lady said was actually a legitimate thing, because black hair mats, and if you don't actually take care of your hair, it'll fucking turn into a big ass fucking mat. So older ladies who aren't able to do their own hair, they have to go to a hair salon or go to somebody that knows how to do black hair. Like, and it has nothing to do with being racist or being like, I just want to be pretty. It's like literally if they don't get their hair done and take care of their hair, because it's different than white hair. So that actually did make sense. Like,
viewers,
same when people have already done their hair, it'll fucking turn into one big mat if you don't keep up with it. Because I used to do Malcolm's dreads every like month or so. I used to do Malcolm's dreads.
Organisation that would have delivered your Mother's Day card for today if you hadn't forgotten to know one like an ungrateful sack of shit. The USPS provides valuable services from delivering mail and packages to brilliantly ruining TikTok videos.
I wish I got mail. All the mail I get is for someone else. Very depressing. Actually, it's probably better because I probably just get fucking bills.
That is excellent. The wave, to the laugh, to the how you're doing, every single part of that is great. I want that woman to interrupt every TikTok video. In fact, take this one of an orangutan involved in an interspecies orgy.
You ever been licked by a cow? It's so icky.
Already very good, right? Exactly. Hard to improve.
And they bite hard.
infinitely better. That's a cake on a cake right there. Keep
I was
cracking
in
TikToks,
kindergarten.
you national fucking treasure.
And we went
The
to
Postal Service is rich
fucking a
and
farm or
storied
something.
history. It actually
I
predates
think we
the
went to a
founding
dairy
of this
farm or
country,
something.
and
We were petting
it
the
has an
cows, and one of the cows bit
obligation
my fingers.
to bring
I also
money
had
to
zebras
every
bite my
single
fingers.
household, even transporting it to the bottom of the Grand Canyon by mule. Over the years, Americans have relied on it for a surprisingly wide variety of needs.
Ah, fuck.
Country children often watch for the mailman. Just see what has come today. A big box with many holes in it. The box is full of baby chicks.
I want
Baby chicks don't have to eat or
chickens.
drink for a whole day after they're hatched, so they can travel safely through the mail.
It's true.
I only
You
used to
used to
get
be able to
ducks
send
because
live
people would
baby
get them
chicks
for
through the mail.
Easter,
Guess
and then
what?
their mothers would be
still
like, "You're
can.
not bringing a
The
duck into
Postal
my
Service
fucking
also
house," so they'd end up
all
at my
kinds of live
house.
poultry for you, including chickens, ducks, geese, and turkeys. Which actually raises the question: why the fuck would I ever send a greeting card again when I could mail someone a birthday turkey, or a thank you duck, or a sympathy goose? Who wouldn't want?
People used to
a
do it all the time
sympathy
for
goose? And
Easter.
sure, in that
People
respect,
used to
but
get
now
people
we have a
like their
small
significant
goose,
other
which
like
is- this is
fucking
good.
for puppies for birthdays and
But the current
chicks
pandemic
for
is
Easter
obviously
and
making
bunnies for
very
Easter,
difficult
and then they're
for
like,
people.
"Ah, I don't really want
As you
this." Like,
probably know, from
never
seeing
get
stories
somebody a pet as a gift.
I am
That is
very
like rule
worried.
number one about fucking
Very
pets.
worried.
Never
Worried
give
about me to
somebody
the
a
point
pet
that
as a gift.
I worry about coming to work every day. I don't want to contract it to bring it back to my family. Do you feel like you're at risk every time you go to work? Yes.
Can't say that it's not in the back of everybody's mind. There is a joke amongst the office: are we essential or sacrificial?
Holy shit, that is a dark joke. Most office humans
Ha,
just
ha,
want to
ha,
label
ha,
working hard or hardly working, or someone's microwaving fish again, not will any of us die today, LMFAO. And those fears are not misplaced. Over 1,000 postal workers have tested
That is the
positive for
epitome
COVID-19,
of my
and more than
humor at this
40
point.
have died. But both in addition to and because
That's
of
why I
the
can't make
ongoing
new
pandemic,
friends, especially
these
friends
workers
that have
also
never
have to
like
grapple
had
with
struggles in
another
their life.
existential threat.
I really
The
wanted to
Postal
just have
Service
normal friends
may be
without
about to
actual
go
like
broke.
real problems.
The outgoing postmaster
And I'd
general
like
recently
say a
asked
joke,
Congress to
and people would
$89
just stare at me,
billion.
being like,
Without
"Why is that
financial
funny
help,
to you?" And I was
the
like,
USPS may not make
I
it
guess
past
it's not funny.
September without
actually, now that you
significant
mention it,
service
you're right. It's probably
interruptions,
not
which is
funny,
upsetting,
but all I could do is
especially
really laugh
during
at
an
it.
election year, a census year, and a pandemic that has people housebound.
You know when things are just so terrible that all you could do is really fucking laugh because you can't believe how terrible everything has gotten? No? Me? Just me?
Not just to receive packages, but in rural areas in particular, a post office can be a community hub. that
I
brings
don't
people
know how
together.
to do
Just
beats
listen to this
anymore.
postmaster in rural Colorado
Fuck.
tell a heartwarming story with a bit of a twist.
Postmaster Berger says neighbors who live far apart run into each other at the post office. That's how everybody keeps in touch, including him.
It's provided me the opportunity to know these people in this town more than I ever thought I would know. Even to the degree where sometimes on my lunch hour I find myself helping a neighbor bury his dog.
Okay, first, what? Second, excuse me? And third, just to circle back,
Fuck
the
off, really?
fuck? Also, you just said sometimes you help bury a dog. That's plural, meaning you've done it more than once. And helping someone do that once is a courtesy. But when it starts becoming a regular thing, you have to wonder why the neighborhood dogs keep dying and why you're always there. The point is, at the worst possible time, this American institution is on the brink of collapse. So tonight, we thought it might be worth asking why that is and what can be done about it. And let's start with the fact that despite being part of the federal government, the Postal Service is actually a self-funded entity. It operates independently and is meant to pay for itself with the money that it makes from services and postage. That might help explain why over the years, it's often tried to encourage stamp collecting with commercials like this.
Oh.
Hey, let's get stuck on. What's that? There's stuck on there.
No. No, it's not. It's not. My grandfather fucking was in the Shuggy Stamp Club.
First, that song.
It's don't ever do stamps. After my dad retired, he was going through all my grandpa's stamps. Oh my god.
Dino stamps to the damp
I come in, he'd be like,
Get
"Hey, Matt,
Well stamp with
see the
irises.
stamp?"
My personal favorite, the
Yeah.
one that simply says,
He goes,
"Lace."
"Guess how much the stamp costs?"
Well, I think I speak for
I was
cool
like,
kids
"I don't know how
everywhere.
much."
I
He's
say,
like,
"There's
12
something-
cents.
Nothing dope other
See
than
this
total
stamp?
bitch in lace.
Yeah.
I'm just worried it
Guess how
might
much that would
be
cost?
Too cool.
How much,
And
Dad?
you might think you
7
know
cents.
why the postal service is so
It's like, oh.
the internet and email mean that people
What a
just don't
waste
use
of
it as
fucking
much,
life.
But that's not actually the main reason. In fact, experts believe it would still be turning a profit were it not for a 2006 law called the
I did it with stamps, I did it with coins, and now I have other people's like card collections, and I was like starting to do the card thing, and I was like, no.
on a 50-year schedule, starting with an aggressive
Not spending hours of my life
$5 billion
looking up a
year
bunch of different
for 10
hockey
years.
cards
That
when I
in
hate
itself
hockey,
was a
and
massive burden to put on the postal service, but the law also limited its flexibility to raise money by putting
like this is a
price caps
$1 card,
major
but if you
products
pay
on first-class
$15
hires.
to have it
So they
minted,
had
it becomes
massive
a
new obligations
$9
to
card.
even as their
Oh,
income was basically
you spent
locked in
$15
place.
getting a
In
card
hindsight,
minted. That
this
was
is
$1,
what the clear
and now it's
difference
$9,
is
so
so
you
strong
still
that it
lost
passed
money.
largely unnoticed at the time, and with bipartisan support. And the effect was
Because you
almost
could send the
immediate.
cards to get
Because the
minted, and
postal
that day
service
that you
went
sent
from
it to get
reporting a net
minted,
income
it's
of
worth
$900
something, and
million
then by the time you get it back, it might not have value anymore. And you just minted that card for literally no reason.
And good luck selling enough dope-ass lace stamps to get yourself out of that.
Because apparently, like,
So the
Wayne
truth is,
Gretzky,
the
highly
postal service
fucking
probably
high demand for Wayne Gretzky anything. Doesn't mean it's still worth anything. Like,
that the stipulations of this
out of all the cards that are worth $1 or less, this card is now worth $5.
And that is despite them shedding over 100,000
That's just like on the paper, that's what it says. Getting somebody to buy that card for $5, not gonna happen.
Former Fox News commentator John Stossel hold it up as a sign that government agencies are just naturally bloated and incompetent.
Another myth. Government can run the post office like a business, but real businesses can't lose billions every year. 16 billion last year. UPS and others make billions because they innovate and cut costs.
Okay, there's a lot wrong with that, but he is right that FedEx is pretty good at innovating. For example, you've probably seen the arrow hidden in the FedEx logo, but did you know that for years there also used to be a swastika hidden in the D? Yeah, once you see it, like the arrow, you can't unsee it, but they took it out because businesses have to innovate. Now, what Stossel is advocating for there, and what many conservatives would prefer, is for the Postal Service to be privatised. But there are some huge drawbacks to that idea. For starters, as you may have noticed, FedEx and UPS charge a fuck of a lot more to deliver than the Postal Service does. Also, those remote addresses that they are obligated to deliver to aren't just difficult to get to, they're not profitable. And in all likelihood, companies would cut those routes off, meaning a lot of people would lose access.
Look at that again.
16 billion last year. FedEx, UPS, and others make billions because they innovate and cut costs.
Okay, there's a lot wrong with that, but he is right that FedEx is pretty good at innovating. For example, you've probably seen the arrow hidden in the FedEx logo, but did you know that for years there also used to be a swastika hidden in the D? Yeah, once you see it, like the arrow, you can't unsee it, but they took it out because businesses have to innovate. Now, what Stossel is advocating for there, and what many conservatives would prefer, is for the Postal Service to be privatised. But there are some huge drawbacks to that idea. For starters, as you may have noticed, FedEx and UPS charge a fuck of a lot more to deliver than the Postal Service does. Also, those remote addresses that they are obligated to deliver to aren't just difficult to get to, they're not profitable. And in all likelihood, companies would cut those routes off, meaning a lot of people would lose access. And to his credit, John Stossel fully acknowledges that, although basically says in
Anything that
response,
he's right
shit.
about?
The Constitution says Congress has the power to establish post offices. It doesn't have to, and it doesn't have to deliver mail to all of America.
Who says there needs to be universal service? If I live way out in the boondocks, I could get email.
Now, it's hard to decide what I like least about that, his dismissive attitude towards rural Americans, the incorrect assumption that email is a decent substitute for the Postal Service, conveniently glossing over the fact that an estimated 42 million people lack access to broadband internet, or the unfortunate fact that John Stossel
I live
thought
in
what would happen if someone tried to queer-eye Geraldo
what should have been the
Rivera
most popular city in
And
Canada
the Postal Service is
until we
mutual
decided
rifle
that actually it
for
would
many
be
Americans.
Toronto,
Importantly,
where everything closes at 1:30.
prescriptions last year,
and then
including
no one
close
wants to live in
100%
Toronto
prescriptions
anymore,
from the
other than
VA.
like the
And what
3
you might
months
be
that they
able to
come
buy
to
medicine
Toronto
online.
to
You can't
live.
actually download
Now they're
medicine
talking about
from the
Calgary.
internet. To clarify, you can download the medicine. Jeremy ran
And
a
obviously
spreadsheet
Vancouver or
from the internet,
fucking
but this is very
BC,
important. You shouldn't do that. And that
either
is the
you're
potential
fucking
business impact
junkie
of
on the
privatization.
street, or you're
Small
a rich
businesses would
fucking
immediately be affected
Trudeau
if
living
services
on an
like
island.
this rock engraving company in rural Kansas.
Fisher Rock is another company that uses the local post office to ship some of their smaller products.
Just about every day we mail out something. I hate to see them lose our post office in Home City. It's handy for businesses like myself just to run in there and get postage and mail out rocks.
Yeah, it would be a real shame if that business couldn't mail out its rocks, like this one that says "Real Women Heart Little Wieners," or this one that says "The grass is greener under my wiener." I mean, that's a perfect rock right there. If the Postal Service stopped delivering gut busters like that, it would be a fucking tragedy. Although, not for me to be honest, since I already bought mine, and I've got to say, it's definitely funnier in person. One of the funniest things about it is how genuinely heavy this is. And look, it's not just small businesses. Companies like FedEx and UPS often hand off their packages to the Postal Service for the last leg of the delivery, especially in
now they
rural
have third
areas.
party,
Amazon
like
also
in
contracts many of its
what are they
deliveries
called?
out to it. And that, weirdly enough, brings us to one of the biggest things standing in the way of the USPS getting the federal assistance it so badly needs right now, because this guy has strongly opposed giving it sufficient aid, and many believe that's because of its
telecom,
relationship with
I think
Amazon.
they're called. It's a
And
third
of
party
course,
delivery.
like Jeff Bezos, who also owns the Washington Post, whose political coverage is hated by the president, who, as we know, makes policy decisions based on his never-ending game of 6 degrees of how is this about me. Just watch him try to explain why the Postal Service should not get federal help.
The Postal Service is a joke because they're handing out packages for Amazon and other internet companies, and every time they bring a package, they lose money on it. The post office should raise the price of a package by approximately 4 times because they don't raise it.
That's what they're saying now. They're saying because they didn't raise their price for so long,
some of these companies.
and then when they finally did, they would have had to raise it to a price that
The
people
Postal
are.
Service is not a joke. It delivers jokes, yes, and they are, as we know, absolutely hilarious, but it's not in itself a joke. Greener under my wiener. This is the funniest rock of all time. Jesus Christ. But second, if the Postal Service quadruples
That's
prices
so
on
sad.
packages, those package delivery costs will almost
That's the other thing
certainly
that I
pass on to the
realized.
consumer,
The
because
people
they're companies
who are
they don't
most
give a shit.
into sports
And third,
are
it
people
isn't
who've
cutting
never
so much
fucking
to lose money
like
on
actually
delivery because, in addition
been
to everything
able to
else we've
compete
already
in a
discussed,
sport in their
that
whole lives
2006
because they
law
are just
made it illegal for the USPS to price parcel
sacks
deliveries
of flesh.
below its cost. So in summation here, Trump is absolutely convinced that the Postal Service's biggest problem is one of the few things that is not actually one of its problems. And that's not just annoying, it's really worrying, especially as just this week he replaced the outgoing Postmaster General with this guy, Louis DeJoy, a major Trump donor. And that appointment has worried many, many people that Trump may now be able to bend the Postal Service to his will, presumably meaning that by next year, every stamp in America will feature one of Jeff Bezos' dick pics. And the thing is, there are absolutely solutions that would enable the Postal Service to help themselves, but for all the reasons that we've discussed, their hands are tied when it comes to pricing on their main product, which may actually help explain some of their very weird side hustles. For instance, you can go on their website and buy this costume for your dog, which is a great way to make your dog performing a postal-themed rendition of Dick in a Box. Also, a few years back, they entered into a bizarre partnership with Forever 21 to unveil a Postal Service-themed fashion line, although, as this YouTuber will
No,
tell
I'm
you,
thinking of
there
American
were a
Apparel
few issues
clothes.
with their garments.
Oh my gosh. Why is any of this happening? It's like, yes, I am the priority. My boobs are the priority. Overall, I'm gonna give it a 3.5
Her
out of
boobs
10.
literally are like
When
half
you're
of her
wearing nothing but the
torso.
word priority stretched over your chest, it's a little weird to realize that the answer to the question, why is any of this happening, is at least in part the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act of 2006. But look, branching out into fashion clearly won't save the Postal Service. That is why it is
That's
so
really
important
traumatic.
that they're given much more flexibility, not just on pricing, but also on the types of services they can offer. Now, experts suggest that post offices could expand their services to issue things like hunting and fishing licenses. And perhaps the best option is something called postal banking, where the post office doesn't so much act as a bank as provide some very basic financial services like savings accounts and check cashing. That wouldn't just generate revenue, it could also help the estimated 25% of people in this country living in unbanked or underbanked communities who are often forced to turn to alternative financial services like payday lenders, which can charge up to 400% in fees and interest. And this wouldn't be completely out of the Postal Service's
Well,
lane.
if
Not only
you
do they
live in
already provide
Quebec,
some
you could just
services
go to the
like selling
mafia
money
instead.
orders, money transfers, and prepaid cards. But up until the 1960s, they were already doing it.
I mean, the government.
of its income is derived from the sale of stamps. The post office is also the largest savings bank in the country and the largest agency for the transfer of money. It takes in more than $1.5 billion annually.
You know, it's depressing that the weirdest thing about watching old-timey clips now isn't that they're in black and white or that people are wearing hats. It's that everyone is standing next to each other in a public place with no fear of dying. Honestly, at this point, I have such severe quarantine brain, I wake up in the Jurassic period, and my first thought would be, holy shit, those stegosauruses are standing way too close together. But look, postal banking is clearly more of a long-term solution. It won't get the USPS
Yeah, but
out
you
of its current
said
mess.
like a
What
lot
they
of
badly
things
need
with
is an infusion of
a
funding
lot of
as soon as
certainty
possible. And
recently.
not only
Like,
should we be demanding that they get
we are what,
Congress
11
should also take a look
episodes
at
in?
undoing some of the more onerous terms in that
He's already
2006
spent
law.
11
Until then,
episodes
there might actually
saying
be something small that we can
that they are certain about the
is
issue
still a key
and
revenue
what the
generator.
easy solution
And
is,
if
and
you
everyone
actually
else is
get
just too
stamps
dumb
money,
to
TC shows
understand
have done this in the
and
past.
refusing
American
to be
Idol,
cooperative.
Stamps, and Vink and Full Frontal recently did giveaways. And while it will not come close to raising the $90 billion the Postal Service badly needs, we've actually been working with Stamps.com for weeks to not just do a giveaway, but to produce a run of stamps that are available for you to buy right now. If you go to stamps.com/lost,
My nephew made me fucking self-conscious of me doing my nails. Because he was like 4 or 5 and he looked at my nails. He was like,
a stamp. You can
Auntie,
buy
you're really
sheets
bad
of
at that.
for the next month.
I think
And
you're
would
supposed to go
really
inside the
encourage you to do
lines.
that.
I was
Now,
like,
the perfect way
first
to
of
mail a
all,
card that
you're like
supports the
5.
USPS in its time of
Second of
need,
all, let's
while
see you
also
do a
saying,
better
"I
job.
like
So he
last
did my
week's
other
lunch,
hand for
and
me,
also
and he
I
did a
forgot
much better
Mother's
job
Day,
than me. And I was
which
like,
you
oh,
did, you piece of shit."
well then.
If you like this segment, please buy a stamp and support the Postal Service.
I don't know
If you
how to
hate
feel
it,
about this
buy one
segment.
anyway, and mail me a letter about how much I suck.
Letter about how Oh, that's great. I like when videos do that. If you liked it, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, a thumbs down. Because either way, it still fucking gives your channel credibility.
Look, it's been another long, strange week with the world struggling to deal with the coronavirus, and some have been chafing at stay-at-home orders, and not just here, but also abroad.
Take a look at these pictures from Peru. These are street performers in the south of the country who are arrested for flouting lockdown rules. More than 20 of them in all. They were taken to a local police station after being caught holding a Mother's Day parade.
Okay, first, what the fuck is Mother's Day like in Peru, and why isn't it like that here? And second, you have got to admire the people who kept the heads of their costumes on while being arrested. That's some serious commitment to staying in character. Whoever's inside of that costume is truly the Daniel Day-Lewis of Peruvian Tweety birds. Meanwhile, here in the United States,
on
this
Mother's
week's
Day
Congress
in
is
Peru.
testimony from Rick Bright,
Why aren't we
ousted
doing
top
that
vaccine
here?
official turned whistleblower, who described missed opportunities such as this moment in January when a manufacturer of PPE tried to sound an alarm.
I'll never forget the email I received from Mike Bowen and indicating that our mask supply or N95 respirator supply was completely decimated, and he said, "We're in deep shit. The world is, and we need to act."
Yeah,
you guys are gonna be the fucking heroes of the day.
Just Korea public health officials saying on the record, "Shit's fucked, motherfuckers." You know, it feels like as time goes on, we're about to find out more clear warning signs that the Trump administration just flat out ignored. I'm assuming we'll eventually learn that Trump was personally delivered a report in January titled "What to Expect When You're Expecting the Coronavirus to Kill 80,000 Americans in 4 Months." And why you would expect the president to be laser focused on this
And when the
pandemic
numbers
and nothing
stopped
else.
making
He took a
sense,
break on
they
Friday
said
to
the
unveil
numbers
the
are
new
so
Space
high
Force
that
flag and do
there's
anything
no
right.
point in counting. Who does that sound like? Who does that sound exactly like? Mark Carney's federal budget.
bases.
There's
going
no
to be,
point in even giving you a number
the
because the
future
number's going to be
without a leader.
so wrong.
Yeah, that happened. Donald Trump posed with a gigantic Space Force flag while standing way too close to someone, referred to a super duper missile, and
now
called the
they're
US
claiming
the
that they're
leader
going
in
to do
space. He
things
truly had the
differently.
spirit, brain, appetite, temper, patience, and wit of a child that you hate. Now, there's also been a major scandal brewing in Washington surrounding North Carolina Senator and Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr, and it kicked up a notch on Wednesday with a startling development.
Law enforcement officials say the FBI served a search warrant Wednesday night at Senator Burr's home. They say it was part of an investigation into stock sales related to the coronavirus. The officials say Burr handed over a cell phone to the agents at his home in Washington.
It's true. The FBI seized Burr's cell phone on suspicion that he may have used non-public information from coronavirus briefings to dump shares ahead of the market crash, which, among other things, is a reminder that the FBI could barge into your house and confiscate your phone. So if the photo on your phone's home screen is something you don't want the FBI to see, like, let's say, a very tasteful image of a hamster in a Speedo, you should change it immediately. Now, there's nothing illegal about that particular example, by the way. That's just something I randomly thought of. And on a completely unrelated note, I just have to do something real quick.
I don't understand what he got in shit for.
Good. Okay, back to Richard Burr. The details
For selling
here
his
do not
shares
look
before a
particularly
market crash?
Before the market tumbled, Burr and other members of the Senate were told in a February briefing about the potential impact of the crisis to come. The day after, Burr sold up to $1.7 million in stock, including shares in the travel and hotel industry.
That is pretty damning. The only way that could have been any shady is if Burr then bought a ton of shares in the actual coronavirus.
Wait.
Right, buddy. Good. Okay, back to Richard Burr. The details here do not look particularly good for him.
Before the market tumbled, Burr and other members of the Senate were told in a February briefing about the potential impact of the crisis to come.
I don't understand what he did wrong. Okay, COVID officially, okay, let's just like for the timeline reasons, and like even me, I'm a very visual person, but even I could do this in my head. If COVID officially started, let's say October, November in 2019. He got an update in February of 2020, and he sold his shares. Why would that be illegal? Because they're insinuating that because he's a senator, he got early warning that the stock market crashed. But I feel like even without that warning, once COVID started, that probably was a good enough indication to pull out of the stock market, depending on what stocks you have, like in hotel and restaurants and shit. Obviously, like, and it's not unusual to try to, predict. Like people predict the stock market all the time, and based off of predictions from previous stock market tracking, sometimes it's pretty easy to predict a pattern. Like, I feel this is like would have been really easy to predict. Like, hey, I should probably look into pulling out my money from the stock markets that I've invested in. In February, they got confirmation that you should probably pull out of the stock market, and you got shit because people who are not senators or who, like, I feel like they only went after him to discourage people to do the same thing. That's what I feel like this is. Just saying.
The day after, Burr sold up to $1.7 million in stock, including shares in the travel and hotel industry.
Which would have been super smart.
Pretty damning. The only way that could have been any shadier is if Burr then bought a ton of shares in the actual coronavirus. Now, Burr staunchly maintains that he did
Which a
nothing
lot
wrong
of
here,
people
based on the
did.
sales solely on news reports.
They
at the
started
time. And you know
investing
what?
in medical stuff.
But there are things in Burr's past that are inherently suspicious. For one thing, there was his position on the Stock Act, which forbids members of Congress from trading on non-public information that they learn on the job. Burr was one of only 3 senators to vote against that legislation. And in terms of outright character flaws, there's also the fact that apparently he never wears socks, which is not just completely unacceptable. It seems like it's something he's actively proud of.
What is your position on socks? Listen, I'm not opposed. We manufacture a lot of socks in North Carolina. I just choose not to wear them. And it's a Southern thing. It's a cultural thing.
What? Going foot commando is not a Southern cultural thing. Just because you choose to do something and you're from the South does not mean everyone there does it. Not wearing socks isn't a Southern thing any more than wearing socks on your penis is a West Coast thing.
Every
Well,
time-
very particularly a Red Hot Chili Peppers thing.
Yeah, every time I fucking, I'm the only one doing something, the more that people get upset about it, even though it's like a thing that I do that doesn't affect their lives, it's just different, and it makes that people uncomfortable. After a couple of years, a lot of people will just like pick up doing that exact same thing. I'm like, whatever, it's cool. Like, I don't give a shit.
My husband, John Cusmano.
I just found it weird at the time that people fucking put so much
cameraman and director
of their mental fucking energy into something that had nothing, like, me wearing a cat hat. Why would that get you so mad that you want to hit me? Now everyone's wearing a cat hat. Same with Meow Meow. Guy who in Toronto who ran people over on the sidewalk in a van. They said that, oh, he was really weird. He used to meow in school. I'm like, oh no. Is that an indication that I'm a psycho that might fucking run people over in my car?
Here's our chicken. Did you see that?
You know, you're not a cat, right? Yeah. I'm well aware that I'm not a cat. Then why do you meow at people?
My way, dude, I can't reach any of my tools.
Because I want to put you in mental distress over me meowing.
Anyway, moving along. You're always full of happy memories. Date night. This is so fun, right? Like it's supposed to look dirty.
Let me finish. This is why I try not to pick a fight with Rachel.
I the fuck
Our main story tonight concerns sports, the thing O.J. Simpson used to be famous for. The coronavirus has taken its toll on all manner of industries, but the world of sports was among those hit hardest, earliest, and perhaps most visibly. Because just think back to the day that you first realised our lives were going to fundamentally change for a while. For many, it was when this happened.
2 days before he tested positive for coronavirus, Utah Jazz All-Star Rudy Gobert did this to reporters' microphones in an interview. This morning, the NBA suspending the rest of its season. The unprecedented move shocking everyone, including Dallas Mavs owner Mark Cuban.
Just think about how astonishing something has to be to shock Mark Cuban. Keep in mind, he's one of the sharks on Shark Tank. He's been pitched businesses like Rent-A-Goat, a service that rents out goats to eat overgrown shrubs, Squirrel Boss, a bird feeder that gives electric shocks to squirrels, and Elephant's Chat, a literal stuffed elephant that you put in the room to signal that there's something uncomfortable to talk about. Mark Cuban has already seen the most jaw-dropping, inconceivable things this world has to offer. And it wasn't just basketball vanishing suddenly. Since then, the NHL has suspended its season. Major League Baseball pushed back its opening day to an unknown date. International Soccer League suspended games, and the Olympics were moved to next summer. And as shocking as these cancellations seemed at the time, the truth is, there was really no choice. Sporting events with large crowds packed together are the exact opposite of social distancing, and they're a nightmare scenario during a pandemic. This Champions League match in Milan in February was later likened to a biological bomb after it was linked to one of the deadliest outbreaks. But though sport shutting down was emphatically the right thing to do, people have increasingly been asking when they can return, and few have asked louder than this guy.
I hope football can start. And I told them, I think you might be able to. They may very well be able to. I hope they can start, and I hope they can start with people in the stands. The fans want to be back too. You know, they want to see basketball and baseball and football and hockey. They want to see their sports. We have to get our sports back. I'm tired of watching baseball games that are 14 years old. But I haven't actually had too much time to watch. I would say maybe I'll watch one batter and then I get back to work.
Okay, but here's the thing. We actually asked some experts about that, and it turns out that when the country's in the middle of a pandemic that's killing many thousands of Americans every single week, the correct number of batters from 2006 for the president to be watching is actually fucking 0. But look, he's not entirely wrong there. The lack of sports is an emotional blow to a lot of people, and it's not just emotional, it's also financial. By one estimate, the sudden disappearance of sports will erase at least $12 billion in revenues and hundreds of thousands of jobs in this country alone. And those jobs aren't just the high-paid athletes playing the games. They also include the many people who count on sporting events for employment, like these two Philadelphia stadium workers.
Marvin Spratley made $14 an hour as a part-time grill cook and made 2 years at Sixers, Flyers, Eagles games.
It's a lot of stress on me. A lot of stress.
Raisha Johnson is a maintenance worker at Phillies games.
I have food on the table now. I'm making it right at this moment. But I don't know what tomorrow may bring.
Yeah, that's really difficult. And it's worth remembering that although Philadelphia sports fans are a horde of inhuman monsters who deserve neither sympathy nor understanding, the people paid to tend to those monsters really depend on their monster money. So given that the absence of sport has caused such pain, we thought tonight we'd take a look at what sports have become in the age of coronavirus and what a path back for them might look like. And first, let me say that the sports world has been doing some truly great things during this pandemic. Teams and athletes have been donating and raising money for charity, with some even selling branded face masks for coronavirus-related causes. And despite not being able to play, teams have found ways to stay engaged with their fans online while modeling social distancing. The Pittsburgh Pirates Parrot posted an at-home workout video. The Chicago Blackhawks mascot, Tommy Hawk, vacuumed his apartment. And Gritty once again blew them all away without even trying. I don't know what's more amazing there. Gritty's incredible hand-eye coordination, the fact he seems to live in an entirely empty apartment, or the discovery that his body occasionally squeaks when it moves, presumably because, evolutionarily speaking, Gritty's closest relative is a used dog toy. And it's not just mascots. Athletes have been showing how they're trying to work from home, which has not always been easy for them. For instance, reigning NBA MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo told reporters last month that he's been unable to practice because he doesn't have a hoop at his house. Others have had to get pretty creative to continue their training, whether it's an Olympic swimmer training in a kiddie pool with a bungee cord, an Olympic runner creating makeshift treadmills in a bathtub with palm olive, an Olympic rock climber using a home as a climbing gym, or Brendan Kine of the Orioles squatting his dog, who seems utterly delighted by the situation. But not every at-home training session goes smoothly, as Dodgers pitcher Joe Kelly recently discovered.
Wondering how quarantine's going? Joe's working on a change-up. Yeah.
Honestly, if I was Joe Kelly's wife, I'd never get that window fixed, and I'd just make him explain what happened every time someone came over. Oh, that window. Joe, do you want to tell that story? Because I kind of forget some of the details, like how many millions of dollars you've been paid for your ability to throw a baseball accurately, how big the net was, and how many feet you missed it by. You just go ahead and tell the story while I pull up the video. As for broadcasters who are reliant on live events, they are now in a truly desperate situation. While ESPN moved up their 10-part Michael Jordan documentary, they've otherwise been strapped for content, airing video game versions of baseball and basketball, with SportsCenter at one point actually tweeting out this.
Okay.
Now, you might be wondering, what the fuck did I just see? Well, apparently that came from a Russian show called Stone Faces, where contestants slap each other as hard as they can. And this particular guy is a renowned competitive slapper whose real name doesn't matter because his nickname is Dumpling, which is just an outstanding name for that man. And at this point, I don't need to know anything else. I'm all in on competitive slapping. Just tell me what channel to subscribe to in order to watch it and where to order my dumpling jersey. So if we are all reaching the formation where we're honestly willing to watch large men slap each other in a windowless room, there is clearly a desire to restart sporting events. The question, though, isn't why sports should come back, it's how that can safely happen. Because to do it responsibly would be a mammoth undertaking. To do it irresponsibly, however, turns out to be pretty easy. The state of Florida early on designated professional sports and media production with a national audience as an essential service, so long as it's closed to the general public. So the WWE has continued staging shows in Florida, holding matches in front of empty chairs. But that requires a lot more people than just those two working together in close proximity. And while the WWE maintains its safety measures are as comprehensive as they can possibly be, one employee wrote an anonymous letter to a Florida county commissioner asking them to shut the tapings down because, despite sanitary precautions, we cannot maintain social distancing and have to touch other people. But it's easy to see why CEO Vince McMahon doesn't mind them taking that risk. As he told investors on a recent earnings call, viewers want to see new matches.
I think new content is always a driver in terms of stimulating interest and what have you. And obviously, everyone is very much starved for new content. It could very well be they're tired of watching Netflix and what do you see, strong men running around in their underwear.
Okay, well first, I would argue that the risks of creating content the way that you are seem to outweigh the benefits right now. And second, no one on that call registered your point there because you just said stimulating, strong men, underwear, and crucially, driver, all in the same sentence, at which point everyone's minds turned immediately to getting absolutely bone crushed by Adam Driver. Choke slam me to hell, you nasty shed. Jam your mandible claw down my throat, you irredeemable steer. Quick side note here. A lot of you might well be wondering where I'm going with this bit. If you're anything like my staff, you're asking questions like, is this sexual or is it violent? And you're then unsatisfied when the answer comes back, yes. If you're like my wife, you might be asking, should I be worried about this? With your concern only growing when the answer is, only if you want to be. And what of Adam Driver himself? Is he bothered by this continued sexualization? He seems like a fairly private guy who's generally uncomfortable with attention, making what I'm doing possibly some form of harassment. He might actually have pretty good grounds to have me reprimanded legally, to which I say, do it. Slap a restraining order on me, you forlorn block. Beg me to stop, you menacing obstacle. And it's not just the WWE. Their competitor AEW is also taking shows in Florida, and the UFC just last week started hosting matches in Jacksonville. And while they couldn't fly in international fighters for that event, their president, Dana White, has devised an insane workaround.
Fight Island is real. Fight Island is a real thing. It's really happening. The infrastructure is being built right now on the island. I'm ready to go.
Yes. The UFC is apparently building a facility on a private island that they're calling Fight Island. Now, is that a clever name? No. Is it a perfect name? Yes. Because it's the first thought an idiot would have if they wanted to name a private island where fights happen. Now, it could have called it Brawl Harmers, or Puerto Ruckus, or Aui Maui, or Slam Miguel, but he didn't. He didn't do that. And he didn't even go with the obvious name for an island where you stage UFC fights, which is simply UFC. Look at me, Dana. Why didn't you just call it UFC? It's perfect. But clearly, staging events is risky at the moment. Just the day before last weekend's UFC event, a fighter had to pull out after he and two of his
Pull out, huh?
tested positive.
that a human child? Here. What? Get the fuck out of town. Not only are they like $180, I got 2 out of the garbage. Pretty fucked up. Crazy. Oh my god, my window is so dirty. Well. Whatever. I'm working outside. I don't even care. Oh. All the bugs are fleeing. Got jacked in the face by a moth. Well, that's fun. No! Okay. I know. This is how we get stuff done now. Ha ha ha! I love when I do stupid stuff and it works on the first shot. Anyway. I'm going to stand here for a couple seconds because I want my little seedlings to get a little bit of water, and then I'm going to grab them. Great. I saw. Fuck, where did I see the other one? You good there? Okay? Did you eat something? Whiskey? Baby, you gotta stop eating stuff off the ground. Like, it's kind of my fault up until this point. Because, like, I throw stuff on the ground for him to eat. And I just didn't put two and two together. Like, honestly, I've been saying for a really long, like, for 15 years that I had my dog. I've been like, I am like a master of dog training at this point. I'm really good at training dogs. My dog actually just came pre-trained. Like, I didn't really do anything, but I was more than okay to just take full fucking credit for my dog being so well trained. Next. Somewhere stupid as usual. Get on there. Why is this here? I know I saw one somewhere stupid and I was like, oh, look, another tiny bungee cord. There it is. Please. No! I don't know. Maybe I just leave it out there for a little while. Okay, wait, how long is it supposed to rain? Oh no, that's never gonna work. That's too small. We'll figure it out. What did I say? Okay. You okay there? You good? Okay. What's so stupid? When you're like, I have to write down all the things that I fucking can't forget to do, and you write down one thing, and you're like, what else was I supposed to do? Obviously, I can't wash the windows today. Come on, baby. You're so salty. Okay. I think they got enough water. Nope, you stay. Go. Good. There we go. Okay, we're gonna put them here for now. We'll put them back outside. Water. One, 2, 3, maybe. This is no good. This is no bueno. No, I knew. Listen, a little bit. Oh, I think I fucked it up. Okay. We're gonna do one more thing.
Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Hotline. line. If you are obsessive compulsive, press 1 repeatedly. If you are codependent.
Hello. What's up? Well, I don't know why you're going somewhere.
Well, I was going to go rent some errands, but then
In the rain?
Yeah, it wasn't raining when you messaged.
Oh, wow. Supposed to rain until like tomorrow, apparently.
Okay. So you're not coming.
What?
You're not passing up.
Yeah, why not?
Do you know what?
Oh, well, I can come now if you want.
So were you coming for the like break?
Yeah, and smokes.
Okay, might as well come down then.
Okay.
All right.
All right, I'll see you in a bit.
Hey,
Yeah, I'll see you in a bit.
what's that?
Yeah, I'm good. I'll see you in a bit. I'll leave in like 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Let me know when you're out, Trent. I'll hop in.
Okay.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye.
How is it? Everything's gonna be fucking closed, you dipshit. You know what? Like, where? On St. Catherine. Laval. Of course. You gotta be fucking shitting me, eh? Like, you gotta be fucking kidding. You know what? This is why, literally, people in Montreal just don't even have businesses anymore. Why the fuck would you close your business on the weekends? The fucking, like, doesn't make sense. On the weekdays, you close at 5. On the weekends, sometimes you're not open at all. If you're a business, why the fuck don't you want to make money? Doesn't make any fucking sense. Carbon pavement tomorrow. That's hilarious. I didn't even make the first. Like, fucking outrageous. Like, just so stupid. 1, 2, 3. Lip. 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 And lip. 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 Okay, we'll put them outside longer. Okie dokie. Nope, stay. Oh. Dumb stuff. Yogurt for you. Go-gurt. Oh, I didn't even have those fucking keys. Oh. Okay, I'm just gonna make sure these keys. Okay, so priority numero uno. When we come, oh, stuffy in here. Priority numero uno when we get home. Stop eating bad stuff, baby. I'm supposed to be smoking in here. What to wear, what to wear, what to wear. This is ridiculous. Maybe. I have to fix this. Love that dress. All these dresses I have to fix. I didn't realize. Almost. Yeah. This was great. Chill, it's just my allergies. You okay, Whiskey? Oh, fuck yeah. Okay. Feels crusty for no reason. Probably because I stopped using a detergent or a fabric softener. Seeing if it'll stop my allergic reactions. And then I just need to bow. Oh, Ian. What did you do? Ah. Here upstairs, I don't know. Come on.
Skull brisket, Tommy Buns bin Laden, Rufus T. Nancy, or my personal favourite, Doug. Just Doug, no last name like Cher and Madonna, because that's the Dougiest Doug I've ever seen. Maximum Dougness right there. The point here is, I am not mad at Tug Slam stealing our ideas. He may not even be the first person he stole it. He only filed for the Pite Island trademark a week after a TMZ reporter suggested to him that he call it that. In fact, the only thing that he'd done here that annoyed me was accusing us of using selective facts. Because facts are, to me, what other people's ideas are to Dana White. It's something I'm very passionate about. What apparently upset me was that in our piece we pointed out that 3 people, a UFC fighter and his 2 corners, all tested positive for coronavirus before a recent event. And the story that that it is impossible to return to sports completely without risk right now. Now, White responded on Twitter saying we had 3 events, not 1, which is good, and that those 3 positives came from 1,100 tests, which does initially seem to minimize it. Until you learn that all those tests were administered to just 300 people. Basically, Dana was quoting a larger number to make the positive result look less significant. It seems like, I don't know, a selective fact. Honestly, I think Dana White's just looking for a fight. In fact, I'm almost certain that it is because he's meant to trademark the phrase Dana White looking for a fight. That's real. And as well as looking up his filing for the UFC, it's just one of the many phrases that he's trademarked in the past. There's Fight Library, which is excellent, Chicken Monster, which is somehow even better, and Baddest Motherfucker, which I always assumed was owned by Samuel L. Jackson. Although, interestingly, UFC's filing for that cites only a handful of potential uses and only toy figures and action figures, which doesn't make sense. It'd be a perfect phrase to have on a child's toy. But I don't actually wonder whether it's legal to put that phrase onto other objects. Would Dana White sue you if you put it on something not covered by his trademark? A mug, for instance. Well, I guess we'll never know, will we? Cheers, Dana. Cheers to you. But when we started looking deeper, we also realised there's actually a number of trademarks that they've applied for and got and then let expire. My favourite of which is You Will Submit, which they trademarked for use on baby booties, fanny packs, and walking canes because nothing says I'm going to beat you into submission like a baby with a cane wearing a fanny pack. And look, since Dana took something that we came up with, we're going to return the favour because guess who is now officially in the process of owning the trademark You Will Submit. I'll give you a clue. It's got 2 thumbs, it's sheltering in a white void, and it's about to sell this baby onesie, which you can find at TugSlabMeetsBabyPalace.com. Who's the baddest motherfucker now, Dana? That's our show. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Good night. Buy a onesie. Do it. Hello there, and welcome to the show. And look, we're going to do something a little bit different. Our whole show is actually going to be about one thing. You probably know what, you probably know why. Because all week long, protesters have continued to fill the streets in all 50 states in the wake of the horrific murder of George Floyd by the police. And in response to those protests, which have been a stirring pushback against institutional racism and brutality, it's been frankly sickening to see them met with this.
Across the country, peaceful protests have too often devolved into standoffs with heavily armed police using military-style tactics. Flashbangs, tear gas, bullets, helicopters, armored vehicles.
We're out here peacefully protesting, but they're all like they're going to war.
Yeah, they are. And look, if police are trying to convince the public they're not guilty of displaying excessive force, it's probably not a good idea to repeatedly display excessive force on national television, including in this city, where Mayor de Blasio praised them for their tremendous restraint, almost threatened to send in the National Guard. And I'll say this, having recently said I couldn't wait to go back to 1800 Cuomo again, I didn't think the opportunity would come quite this soon. And these protesters have received a great deal of support, with massive marches taking place all around the world. And the protesters' message has taken many forms, from chants to signs to a man who called into an LA police commission. Now, he's been given 30 seconds, which he used with maximum efficiency to Chief Michael Moore.
I find it disgusting that the LAPD is slaughtering people protesting on the street. I had 2 friends go to the protest in Beverly Hills a couple of days ago, and the protesters, the police showed up with their excessive violent force, shooting rubber bullets and throwing tear gas. Is this what you think of protecting and serving? Because I think it's bullshit. Fuck you, Michael Moore. I refuse to call you an officer or chief because you don't deserve those titles. You are a disgrace. Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
If the president is taking notes, that is what a perfect call looks like. My favourite part is that after he's finished unloading on that police chief, he yields his time, realises he still has a couple of seconds left, so unyields it and throws in a bonus, fuck you. Now, as for the president himself, he initially hitting the protesters in the bunker, later claiming he wasn't hiding, he was actually just inspecting it. Then his attorney general had police gas protesters outside the White House so that Trump could have an inexplicable photo op at a nearby church while holding up a Bible like it's the ticket for his sandwich order that was just booked. He also, in announcing job numbers on Friday, invoked George Floyd's name, saying this was a great day for him, which is utterly fucking disgusting. Well, we're actually not going to focus on Trump tonight, nor are we, unlike some in cable news, going to dwell on the incident of looting that occurred, except to say, if you'd said the name Macy's more than you said the name Breonna Taylor this week, you could very much fuck off. Likewise, if you ask why a spontaneous decentralized protest can't control every one of its participants, more than you're asking the same about a taxpayer-funded, heavily regimented paid workforce, you can also, in the words of this generation's Robert Frost, suck my dick and choke on it, fuck you. Instead, tonight, let's talk about the police. Because all week, we've seen graphic videos which are going to be hard to watch of them driving directly into crowds, beating people with sticks, and sometimes assaulting the right to assemble with shocking speed and barbarity.
Prematurely shoot people? Prematurely using excessive force? Your scary ass on somewhere. Oh my God.
What the fuck? Dude! Are you fucking restrainer at point blank in the face? What the fuck? Oh yeah!
It's fucking sunscreen. And that's just
not just sun, you don't put sunscreen
we're taking this Saturday morning. Who knows what will have happened by Sunday night? Maybe they'll be using grenades, even as the New York Times weighs in with an op-ed titled, "Why do we need to bring Hitler back tonight?" as a road
that poor girl. That's so fucked up. Like,
I mean, they
why the fuck would they do that? That's fucking crazy.
And look, the end users
Oh, right. That's why they would do it. Because they're fucking cops. That's kind of what cops do, right? They serve, they protect, and they spray young ladies in the face point blank with fucking a can of mace. Serve and protect.
Police use force against black people at 7 times the rate of whites. Black Americans are 2.5 times more likely than whites to be killed by police. And about 1 in every 1,000 black men can expect to be killed by police. If you're black in America, I can't even begin to imagine how scared, angry, and exhausted you must feel, not only this week, but constantly. Medical groups say police violence against black and brown Americans is just one of many physical and psychological factors that make racism a serious public health issue. And look, clearly, the police is just one part of a much larger system of racial inequality. For tonight, we are going to focus primarily on them and try to address 3 basic questions: how the fuck we got to this point, what the obstacles to reform have been, and what we can do going forward. And let's start by just acknowledging that the police have long enjoyed an exalted role in American society. In pop culture, they're the heroes of beloved movies and TV shows like Cranky Gun Grandpa and Cocaine Cops Who Fuck and Manic Bigot and his one black friend. America loves nothing more than a renegade cop who doesn't play by the rules. But of course, the reality of police is, and has always been, very different. And it might be worth going through some of the history here, because it's important to understand how deeply policing in this country is entangled with white supremacy. And I know you might be thinking, well, join the club, policing. This is America. The only institution not deeply entangled with the history of white supremacy is Olive Garden. And that's only because it's always been a powerful symbol of white inferiority. But the police have not just been incidentally treated by racism. For much of US history, law enforcement meant enforcing laws that were explicitly designed to subjugate black people. Some of America's first law enforcement units were the slave patrols, tasked with capturing and returning people who'd escaped from slavery. And when slavery ended, white people had no intention of letting that be the end of white power. As one Alabama planter said in the wake of emancipation, we have the power to pass stringent police laws to govern the Negroes. This is a blessing, for they must be controlled in some way, or white people cannot live among them. And I know that's uncomfortable to certainly uncomfortable for me to say. But if we want to talk about how we got here, it's important to remember that we got here on purpose. Now, for a century after that, police in the South were responsible for enforcing segregation while allowing and sometimes participating in lynchings and anti-black terrorism. And as black people migrated to the north by the millions, they were met there, yet again, by brutality. And all of this, coupled with the continued denial of economic and housing opportunities, not always particularly subtle, by the way, meant that by the summer of 1967, there were a series of high-profile uprisings against racial injustice across the United States, or people actually describe that exact time.
The summer of 1967. It is known as the Summer of Love.
Yeah, it is known as that. And that's a pretty big disconnect, isn't it? And it honestly makes me slightly worried that what's happening right now will be remembered one day by white historians as the Summer of Chromatica. And look, things did not improve in the 60s after. Nixon faced fealty to law and order and started the war on drugs, which Reagan later turbocharged. And by the time we got to the 90s, a school of thought with broken windows or zero-tolerance policing had started to take root, which held that if minor crimes are left unattended, it will lead to more serious crimes. Therefore, police had better crack down on those minor offences. That fueled the saturation of police in low-income communities of colour and gave way to policies like stop and frisk, which essentially allowed police officers to search people at random. Our policies peaked in 2011 of the nearly 700,000 stops recorded in New York. The vast majority were of black and Latino people. Or, to put that another way, those policies too often basically amounted to this fucking bullshit, just under a different name. And that sort of aggressive policing was accompanied by constant calls to increase the number of police officers on the streets. And let's be clear here, Democrats were very much involved in that, from big city mayors all the way on up to this guy.
An initiative to put 100,000 more police officers on the street, more prisons, more prevention, 100,000 more police. 100,000 new police in communities of all sizes. We need to finish the job of putting 100,000 more police on our streets. Last fall, Congress supported my plan to hire, in addition to the 100,000 police we've already funded, 50,000 more, concentrated in high-crime neighborhoods.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Congress. 100,000 police officers isn't cool. You know what's cool? Massively expanding a broken institution to score cheap political points. And if you can do that while playing the saxophone, well, that just gets even cooler. And all the while, as we were continuing to boost funding for police and give them more authority, we were simultaneously slashing spending on key social services. That meant that in many communities, the police were the only ones left to handle almost any issue that people had, which is a real problem, as this former Dallas police chief readily admits.
We're asking cops to do too much in this country. We are. We just asking us to do too much. Every facade of failure, we put it off on the cops or something. Not enough mental health funding. Let the cop handle it. Not enough drug addiction funding. Let's give it to the cops. Here in Dallas, we got a loose dog problem. Let's have the cops chase loose dogs.
You know what? He's absolutely right. We are asking police to do far too much. They have a massive array of complicated duties that in many cases they just aren't equipped to handle, making them very much the Jared Kushners of local officials, without, of course, the expression, complexion, and general demeanour of a haunted baby. So, while we should absolutely be angry at the police right now, let's also be angry at the series of choices that left them as essentially the only public resource in some communities. And on top of all of that, we've made those bad choices even more dangerous in recent years by needlessly arming police to the fucking teeth. As we discussed 6 years ago now, we've issued the police literal military-grade equipment, some of which you've seen used to control and intimidate protesters this week. And it's frankly not just a hardware that's a problem here, because a whole sub-industry of police training has also cropped up to reinforce the message that cops are at war. And perhaps no one takes that idea further than this guy.
Once you've made the decision to take a human life, you're a transformed creature in your face. What does the predator do? It kills. Only a killer can touch it. It kills. Are you emotionally, spiritually, psychologically prepared to snuff out a human life in defense of innocent life? If you can't make that decision, you need to find another job.
Wow. You know, the problem with telling someone that they're a predator is that it primes them to see the rest of the world as potential prey. And of course, cops who went through this training could wind up on edge. You would have trained a barber by saying, here are your scissors, snip like this, and oh yeah, this is how to puncture the carotid artery. Now, you won't need to use this 99% of the time, but if you don't think you can make that decision, you need to find another job. Now, that Gross man is actually called Dave Grossman, and he calls himself an expert in killology, a term that he invented and defines as the scholarly study of the destructive act, just as sexology is the scholarly study of the procreative act, which... Ugh. And also, I'm pretty sure that the first lesson in sexology is never call sex the procreative act if you want anyone to procreatively act with you ever again. And as batshit as Grossman is, he's by no means a fringe figure in police culture. He's on the road giving trainings 200 days a year. The officer who shot Philando Castile had taken a class based on Grossman's theories. And when, in the wake of that shooting, the Minneapolis mayor banned officers from participating in warrior-style training, the head of the police union there, Bob Kroll, announced plans to defy that decision.
If they deem that this training is in violation and they're on their own time, they want to attend it, I'm going to do that. I myself would be, if I would be disciplined, I would get help.
I honestly don't know what's more alarming. His determination to train police officers to be predators, his air of casual impunity, or the fact he has a sign in his office that says, let me drop everything and work on your problem, which is always the office decor choice for grade A arsenal, but especially if it's someone whose actual job is to work on other people's problems. And that confidence that he's above punishment actually brings us to the second point that we want to look at tonight. What the major obstacles to reform have been, because one of the biggest issues is police unions. Even in cities where the mayor and police chief say all the right things, it's important to note that the union can stop whatever they are proposing dead in its tracks. And unions can make it incredibly difficult to discipline officers even for egregious misconduct. Take what happened in Minneapolis with two officers who belong to our friend Bob's union.
Two Minneapolis police officers are on paid leave for allegedly decorating a Christmas tree at the 4th Precinct with a bunch of items that are viewed as racist. Bags of hot hockey chips, a cup from Popeye's fried chicken, menthol cigarettes, and cans of malt liquor, among other things.
Holy shit! That is not just disgusting, it's also arguably the most racist thing to happen to Christmas since people decided that this child born in the Middle East was white. And not only does that incident raise serious questions about those officers, it also implicates the entire precinct because they presumably thought that none of their co-workers would have a problem with what they did. And to his credit, when that story broke, the mayor of Minneapolis announced that the officer responsible would be fired by the end of the day, only to have to almost immediately walk that statement back, saying that there was a process that they were required to go through by law. We actually checked, and despite the fact it's now been a year and a half since that happened, one of those officers' cases is still under arbitration. And look, I get unions fighting for their workers. That is what they do. But police unions take that to a dangerous extreme and negotiate language into contracts that makes removing a problem officer incredibly difficult. A Washington Post analysis of some of the nation's largest police departments found that they fired at least 1,881 officers for misconduct, but were forced to reinstate more than 450 of them. That's almost 25% of the appeals required by their union contracts. And police unions can also oppose even the most basic common sense reform. A few years back, the Cleveland police started being required to file a report every time they unholstered and pointed their gun at someone. And their union head was absolutely furious.
I'm afraid that officers are going to be hesitant to pull their gun in an appropriate situation because they don't want to do the paperwork that's going to be associated with having to pull your gun.
Okay. First, the idea that the risk of paperwork is a greater deterrent to police officers drawing their gun than the risk of killing someone is legitimately terrifying. And it's hard to take that glib dismissal from anyone, let alone someone who looks like a boiled Mr. Potato Head or an angry egg with a mustache. And I know those comparisons probably make him mad, but what's he going to do? Shoot me? I don't think so. Think of the paperwork involved. And that attitude is particularly hard to take, considering that just 6 months previously, Tamir Rice had been killed by a Cleveland police officer. And when faced with accountability that they don't like, unions will often issue the ultimate threat to simply pull back and let crime rise. For instance, listen to how the head of New York City's largest police union reacted when a judge recommended firing the officer whose chokehold led to the death of Eric Garner.
The criminal advocates have gotten what they want. The police department is frozen. The police department can't stop the killers. They can't stop the criminals. They can't effectively do their job. I'm sorry to say that we have to tell our police officers, take it a step slower.
Take it a step slower. He just basically threatened inaction against the killers as a bargaining chip. And besides that being morally reprehensible, it is a tool that most labor unions simply don't have at their disposal. When the unions representing TV writers fight for their members, the worst thing that they can threaten the public with is fewer episodes of Dawn, or The Blacklist, or this show. And that's just not a compelling argument. That wasn't even an empty threat, because following that statement, policing did slow down in New York for a bit last year. There was an 11% drop in felony arrests, an 18% drop in misdemeanor arrests, and a 32% drop in moving violations. But the thing is, if you lived in New York, you probably don't remember it as the time that the city devolved into chaos, because it didn't. People still went about their lives, subways were still as delayed as they usually were, and rats still dragged slices of pizza upstairs to feed their rats' families after a hard day of rat work, making you wonder whether all those arrests were really in the interest of public safety at all. Now, one good way to attempt to get reforms past a union's resistance is if the federal government steps in, which it actually can. It has the power to investigate police departments for a pattern of civil rights violations and enter what is called a consent decree, in which the police department agrees to make institutional changes that are then overseen by a federal court. That could be a powerful tool to force change. In fact, that paperwork requirement in Cleveland that pissed off this day, that came from a consent decree. The problem is, how or even whether the government does that depends on who is running it. And right now, it's this wildly unsuccessful Bible salesman. And he clearly has no interest in police reform. In George W. Bush's first term, his Justice Department launched 12 such investigations into police departments. In Obama's first term, it was 15. Trump's DOJ has launched just a single investigation and has entered 0 consent decrees. Meanwhile, Trump himself has made it clear where he stands on the police youth support. He not only rolled back Obama's restrictions on giving the police military equipment, just listen to what he said to an audience filled with law enforcement.
Please don't be too nice. Like when you guys put somebody in the car and you put when you put their hand and, like, don't hit their head and they just killed somebody, don't hit their head. I said, you can take the hand away.
Wow. You know, it's bad enough when it's just a bunch of random shitheads cheering on Trump's lawless rhetoric. It's a lot more alarming when that applause is coming from the people whose main job is to see lawlessness and stop it. So if the unions want to act and the federal government won't act, what else can you do as a civilian to get accountability if the police violated your rights? Well, you could try and sue the city or the individual officer in question. And in high-profile cases especially, they can be incentivized to settle for astonishing amounts. In fact, over a period of 5 years, the 10 cities with the largest police departments paid out $1 billion in settlements and court judgments. And listen, I'm no comptroller. I wish I could. Hard to explain. Equally boring elected accountants who tell the inexplicably took a real work and then stuck an E in the middle of it. Come on. That's my dream job. But even I can tell you, if you're spending $1 billion on misconduct settlements, you might want to seriously examine what conduct looks like. And if the city doesn't feel that it has to settle with you, you're in real trouble, because civil suits against cops are nearly impossible to win. Just listen to a defense attorney explain one reason that it was really difficult for Michael Brown's family to sue the Ferguson officer who killed him.
Civilly, sure, they can go after him civilly. The problem is he has qualified immunity. He's going to say that I was acting within the scope of my employment. This is what I was doing.
Yeah, and he is right about that. Police officers are often protected from consequences due to something called qualified immunity, which sounds like something you get from a horrifying cheat code in Grand Theft Auto. Well, guess what? I turned on qualified immunity and now my car runs on prostitutes. But it's actually worth taking a moment to talk about that tonight. Very basically, qualified immunity means that a public official is immune from lawsuits unless their exact conduct has already been ruled unconstitutional in a previous case. And I do mean exact, because small, tiny variations can result in a case being thrown out. This happens all the time. For instance, one case was thrown out because of the difference between unleashing a police dog to bite a motionless suspect in a bushy ravine and unleashing a police dog to bite a compliant suspect in a canal in the woods, which I totally get. Those are two completely different kinds of outdoor holiness. And then there was this case.
A federal appeals court has ruled Seattle police used excessive force when they tasered a pregnant woman during a traffic stop in 2004. She was shot 3 times with a stun gun for refusing to sign a speeding ticket. Although the ruling was in Brooks' favor, the officer who fired the taser was given immunity because the law on stun gun use was not clear yet.
That is absolutely ridiculous. The method the officer used to assault that woman really shouldn't matter. It's like if Jeffrey Dahmer was declared innocent because he cooked his victims in an Instant Pot. The crime is the killing, not what fucking appliance he used. Now, the good news is, there is a chance that the Supreme Court will soon decide to reconsider qualified immunity for this. There's actually a bill in Congress right now to abolish it, although even if it passes, it may have to wait for a new president to sign it, and we may not get one of those anywhere from the next 4 years to never. But while ending qualified immunity would be great, that alone isn't going to be nearly enough. And that brings us to our final point here. What do we do now? There are a lot of suggestions to look at. Unfortunately, some prominent Democrats have been spitballing ideas that are embarrassingly small and perhaps none more ridiculous than this.
And the other thing is that instead of standing there and shooting a cop and an unarmed person coming out of the knife and shooting the leg instead of the heart, is a very different thing. There's a lot of different things that we can.
Wow. That lack of imagination is not particularly inspiring, but also not particularly surprising coming from Joe Biden, who is truly the getting shot in the leg instead of the heart candidate right now. And while that's obviously absurd, the instinct that Biden just displayed there, that the key question is not if an officer could shoot someone, but where, is shared by many politicians. In New York, Bill de Blasio has balked at making it illegal for police to use chokeholds, despite the fact that a chokehold is precisely what led to the death of Eric Garner. But the fact is, the incremental reforms that we've tried, like the wider use of body cameras, implicit bias and use of force training, are not, on their own, going to cut it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't still try them, but in many cases, we are contending with an entrenched police culture resistant to any effort to compel reform. That is why many are advocating that we rethink police from the ground up. One small example of this is Camden, New Jersey, which 10 years ago was policed by a deeply troubled, corruption-ridden force. But in 2013, they dissolved their city police force entirely, with officers having to reapply for their jobs. And in doing that, they've been able to meaningfully shift the culture, while also instituting policy changes that relate to both a drop in excessive force complaints and some rebuilding of community trust. And look, I'm not saying it's easy, perfect, or even that it would work everywhere, but it should expand our idea of what is possible. One even broader idea that's gaining momentum right now is defunding the police. Now, that's a phrase that on its face may sound alarming to some. In fact, just watch this professional alarmist be alone on his very bad ones.
Defund the police. No more cops. That's what they're saying. That seems like a fringe position, but in the Democratic Party, it isn't anymore. If you live in a gated community, it might sound like a good idea. You've got your own police. You have no plans to replace them with rapid response social workers, so you're set no matter what happens. There aren't going to be any rapes on your street. But what about everyone else? What's going to happen to them?
Okay, first of all, in all sincerity, you seem nervous. This is a difficult moment, and I really hope you're taking time for yourself. Meditation. Just kidding. Fuck you forever, Tucker Carlson, you sentient polo mammoth. Second, given the shockingly low number of rape cases that actually result in charges, much less convictions, I really wouldn't be holding that up as proof that our current system is working well. And finally, defunding the police absolutely does not mean that we eliminate all cops and just succumb to the purge. Instead, It's about moving away from a narrow conception of public safety that relies on policing and punishment and investing in a community's actual safety, things like stable housing, mental health services, and community organisations. The concept is that the role of the police can then significantly shrink because they are not responding to the homeless or to mental health problems or arresting children in schools or really any other situation where the best solution is not someone showing up with a gun. That is the idea behind defund the police if you actually listen to it, which suggests that Tucker Carlson has the exact level of understanding about the Black Lives Matter movement that you would expect from a man who always looks like he just saw his first black Barbie and feels confused but mostly scared. Look, as we know, many police will likely resist any redistribution hard. Police unions often paint themselves as essential and everything else as somehow frivolous. In fact, remember Bob Troll? Well, when Minneapolis asked his union to accept a pay freeze due to COVID-19, here's how he reacted.
The first thing he said was, okay, well, let's see the budget. Let's see the city budget. And guys, they're pissing away millions and millions of dollars projects. You know, they're giving $15,000 a year to the transgender city.
All right, so let's set aside the risks of violence against transgender people, particularly trans women of colour, and instead consider that the budget for the Minneapolis Police Department is $193 million, meaning that 15,000 amounts to 0.008% of their annual budget. And if that's pissing money away, the city should really see a fucking urologist. But guys like Bob, rolling his eyes at anything transgender related is exactly why it is time for our conversation to go beyond how should the police do their jobs to what really do we want the role of the police to be. And too many still seem to think that this is an issue of a few bad actors. In fact, just listen to one officer unsuccessfully try to make that argument to some protesters just this week.
One bad hamburger on McDonald's does not make McDonald's bad.
Yeah, that protester's right. What the fuck does that mean? Because one hamburger should mean a health inspection, few bad hamburgers might mean that McDonald's getting shut down, and bad hamburgers regularly killing people on the street would mean that we'd maybe all consider going fucking vegan. But this clearly isn't about individual officers. It's about a structure built on systemic racism that this country created intentionally and now needs to dismantle intentionally and replace with one that takes into account the needs of the people that it actually serves. And this is going to take sustained pressure and attention over a long period of time from all of us. Black communities have had to be perpetual activists while also routinely being disenfranchised. And it is long past time that the rest of us join to make sure that their voices are heard and acted upon. Because it's going to be far too easy for nothing to meaningfully change here. That is what has always happened before. After the unrest in the late 60s, a commission was set up to investigate and issue advice. Many of its conclusions resemble ideas like a police demilitarization and broad reinvestment in marginalized communities that are still being pushed today. But testifying before that commission was the social scientist Kenneth Clark, and he made this observation, which remains depressingly true. He said, I read the report of the 1919 riot at Chicago, and it's as if I was reading a report of the investigative committee of the Harlem riot of 1935, the report of the investigative committee of the Harlem riot of 1943, the report from the Penn Commission of the Watts riots of 1965. I must again and candor say to you, it is the kind of Alice in Wonderland, with the same movement that we've shown over and over again, the same analysis, the same recommendations, the same inaction. We're in the same shit now that we were in back then. And if you're not directly impacted by it, it is tempting to look for a reason to feel better about the world, to look at some cops kneeling and think, oh, well, we just need more of that. But we need so much more than that. Because ours is a firmly entrenched system in which the roots of white supremacy run deep, and it is critical that we all grab a fucking shovel. To do anything less would be absolutely unforgivable. And actually, to that point, there was one person I saw this week whose words have been echoing around my head, and have been listening to me talk for a while. So now I'm going to let her have the last word.
So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. There is Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have. That if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is different us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, what the fuck do I give a shit about burning the fucking Football Hall of Fame, about burning a fucking park? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give a fuck. You broke the contract over 400 years. We played your games and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own, on our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood, and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so fuck your target. Fuck your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they can burn these bitches to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
That's our show. Thanks for watching.
Hi there, welcome to the show. Still taking place in this white antiseptic room filled with one increasingly weak adult. It's like a hospital, only sad. It's been a week of continued Black Lives Matter protests across the country, which have managed to generate far-reaching effects, both big and small. For instance, Cops was cancelled after 33 years of being that show your dad falls asleep to, and Sesame Street and CNN held a town hall to explain the current moment to children, which didn't please all kids. In fact, just wait for one giant baby's reaction.
Across the country, people of color, especially in the black community, are being treated unfairly because of how they look.
Children's show. Got that, Bobby? America is a very bad place, and it's your fault. So no matter what happens, no matter what they do to you when you grow up, you have no right to complain.
First, obviously, fuck off, Tucker, you one-man homeowners association. And second, that unspecified they in what they do to you when you grow up is doing a lot of heavy lifting. There's basically two options for what that could mean. One, that Tucker and his viewers have benefited from a racist system that renders any specifications of who they are unnecessary. Or two, that his show is a badly written piece of garbage. So, which is it, Tucker? Are you a racist or are you a total fucking moron? The answer can be, and indeed is, both. But the momentum wasn't just confined to television. The Minneapolis City Council has pledged to dismantle that city's police force, while New York lawmakers voted to make police disciplinary records public and passed a law criminalizing the use of chokeholds by police, both of which seem like common sense and the bare minimum. And yet, police union leaders have continued to freak out.
Stop treating us like animals and bugs, and start treating us with some respect. That's what we're here today to say. We've been left out of the conversation. We've been vilified. It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Yeah, you have been left out of the conversation, but I'll tell you why. It's because you've been fucking terrible at conversing. If a high school debate team argued their rebuttals by tear-gassing the other team, they probably wouldn't be invited back to regionals. Now, meanwhile, some have taken dismantling single-god white supremacy into their own hands. Statues across the world are being torn down. A slave trader in Bristol, England, was hurled into the harbour. King Leopold II in Belgium was spray-painted and ultimately removed. And statues of Christopher Columbus have been toppled, beheaded, and in one case, thrown into a lake, where, and this is true, its location was quickly updated on Google Maps because, unlike Christopher Columbus himself, Google knows how to read a fucking map. And these protests have given momentum to official campaigns, like Virginia's effort to remove a statue of Robert E. Lee, an effort that some, like this state senator, have been troubled with.
It's all about shoving desks down people's throats and erasing the history of the white people. And I think that's wrong.
Wow. I mean, setting aside the almost clinical ability to miss the point, you cannot erase the history of white people. It's like the skid marks on the arse of your favourite shorts. No matter how hard you try, that shit's never coming out. And statues aren't the only tribute to a horrifying past now being reconsidered. NASCAR banned the Confederate flag, which prompted one part-time driver to announce he's quitting after this season, although to be fair, that driver had never won a race, so you can kind of understand why a flag for losers might have been important to him. And the country group Lady Antebellum changed their name to just Lady A, which is a solid fix as long as nobody ever asks what the A stands for, or points out that that name's been used by a black blues singer for the last 20 years. And then there was this.
Gone with the Wind is gone from HBO. It's one of the most popular films of all time. It's also been condemned for ignoring the horrors of slavery. Today, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany tore into HBO, making it clear she was speaking on behalf of the president.
Where do you draw the line here? I'm told that no longer can you find on HBO Gone with the Wind because somehow that is now offensive. Where do you draw the line? Should George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison be erased from history?
First, as I've said before, the answer to where do you draw the line is literally always somewhere. You draw it somewhere. Also, HBO is not permanent. It's going back up with additional context. And finally, who gives a shit if something's not on HBO Max? In fact, there may be no better way to obliterate all evidence of something's existence than to put it on HBO Max, the only ash heap of history that costs $15 a month. And look, obviously, symbolic progress is progress, and a lot of these changes have been a long time coming. But this week also brought stubborn reminders of the institutional inertia that is going to make real change so difficult, like Joe Biden sticking by his plan to invest an additional $300 million into community policing efforts, which is an example of whatever the precise opposite of reading the room is. And also, we saw yet more footage of police handcuffing black teens for jaywalking, as well as a newly released video of Oklahoma officers responding to a man saying, "I can't breathe," by saying, "I don't care." That man, incidentally, Derek Scott, would go on to die at the hospital of a collapsed lung. And perhaps most infuriatingly of all, as protesters continue to demand justice for Breonna Taylor, who was killed in her own home by police executing a no-knock warrant, the Louisville Police Department responded with this.
Police in Louisville are releasing the incident report from the night officer shot and killed Breonna Taylor. As the Courier-Journal reports, it's almost entirely blank. The 4-page report says Taylor had no injuries, even though police shot her at least 8 times.
Holy shit, that is appalling. And when it comes to erasing history, this seems a fuck of a lot worse than leaving a bunch of statues toppled, cracked and beheaded, or, as that would probably be described on a Louisville police report, no injuries. So yes, it's important to be honest with the aspects of our past, but there's also hard, necessary work to be done in changing the unacceptable conditions of our present. And the only hope for that is if, to say something that has never once been said about the offerings on HBO Max, people don't take their fucking eyes off this. Now, this.
And now, C-SPAN colors have some thoughts on the coronavirus for the second most patient man on television.
I only have one question. I wanted to know who was the last politician or ex-politician to visit China before this virus?
And why it matters?
I'm curious.
Okay.
I see the guy walking down to his grocery store with a jockey strap on his face.
I practice physical distancing long before anybody tried to tell me I had to, because I don't like people.
Sam is in Seattle, Washington. Sam, go ahead.
So, how you doing?
Fine, thanks. Go ahead.
What do you want to ask me?
Richard in Maryland. Hello.
Hi, I would just like to thank you for taking my call, number one. Number two, you're still up there.
Who the hell is he? He's nobody. He's just a man from Brooklyn, grouchy. Who cares about what he thinks?
He's the lead epidemiologist on the White House task force.
Yeah, somebody at the door. Who's that?
Okay.
But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Stay safe, Papa Bill.
Moving on. Our main story tonight concerns facial recognition, the thing that makes sure my iPhone won't open unless it sees my face or the face of any toucan. But that is it. Facial recognition technology has been showcased in TV shows and movies for years. Denzel Washington even discovered a creative use for it in the 2006 action movie Deja.
We have facial recognition, Paul? Yeah. Let's use it on the bag, cross-match it through all the bags on the south side of the city in the 48 hours leading up to the explosion, all right? Don't think it's ever been used this way. Look, same day. Bingo.
Bingo indeed, Denzel. With smart, believable plot development like that, it's frankly no wonder that Deja Vu received such glowing IMDb reviews as an insult to anybody who finished elementary school, worst movie of all time, more like Deja Vu, and my personal favourite, a one-star review that reads, Bruce Greenwood, as always, is great and so sexy, and there's a cat who survives. A review that was clearly written either by Bruce Greenwood or that cat. Now, the technology behind facial recognition has been around for years, but recently, as it's grown more sophisticated, its applications have expanded greatly. For instance, it's no longer just humans who can be the targets.
The iPhone sensor scans each fish and uses automatic image processing to uniquely identify each individual. A number of symptoms are recognized, including loserfish.
Yes, loserfish, which, by the way, is an actual industry term. Now, that company says it can detect which fish are losers by facial scan, which is important because can you tell which one of these fish is a loser and which one is a winner? Are you sure about that? Because they're the same fish. This is why you need a computer. But the growth of facial recognition and what it's capable of brings with it a host of privacy and civil liberties issues. Because if you want a sense of just how terrifying this technology could be if it becomes part of everyday life, just watch as a Russian TV presenter demonstrates an app called Find Face.
Yes, if you find yourself in a cafe with an attractive girl and you don't have the guts to approach her, no problem. All you need is a smartphone and the application Find Face. Find new friends. Take a picture and wait for the result. Now you're already looking at her profile.
Burn it all down. Burn everything down. I realise that this is a sentence that no one involved in creating that app ever once thought, but just imagine that from a woman's perspective. You're going about your day, when suddenly you get a random message from a guy you don't know that says, "Hello, I saw you in cafe earlier and used Find Face app to learn your name and contact information. I'll pick you up from your place at 8. Don't worry, I already know where you live." But one of the biggest users of facial recognition is, perhaps unsurprisingly, law enforcement. Since 2011, the FBI has logged more than 390,000 facial recognition searches, and the database's law enforcement are pulling with them over 117 million American adults and incorporate, among other things, driver's license photos from residents of all these states. So roughly 1 in 2 of us have had our photos searched this way. And the police will argue that this is all for the best. In fact, here's the official with the London police explaining why they use it there.
Here in London, we've had the London Bridge attack, the Westminster Bridge attack. The suspects involved in that, people guilty of those offences, were often known by the authorities. Had they been on some database, had they been picked up by cameras beforehand, we may have been able to prevent those atrocities, and that would definitely be a price worth paying.
Oh, look, it's hard to come out against the prevention of atrocities. This show is, and always has been, anti-atrocity. But the key question there is, what's the trade-off? If the police can guarantee that they can prevent all robberies, but the only way to do that is by having an officer stationed in every bathroom watching you every time you take a shit, I'm not sure everyone would agree that it's worth it, and the people who do might want that for reasons other than preventing crime. And now it's actually a very good time to be looking at this issue, because there are apparently serious concerns that facial recognition is being used to identify Black Lives Matter protesters. And if that's true, it wouldn't actually be the first time, as this senior scientist at Google, Tim Gabriel, would tell you.
there was an example with the Baltimore police and the Freddie Gray marches, where they used face recognition to identify protesters. And then they try to link them up with their social media profile and then target them for arrest. So right now, a lot of people are actually urging people not to put images of protesters on social media because there are people out there whose job is just to look up these people and target them.
It's true. During the Freddie Gray protests, police officers used facial recognition technology to look for people with outstanding warrants and arrest them, which is a pretty sinister way to undermine the right to assemble. So tonight, let's take a look at facial recognition. Let's start with the fact that even as big companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and IBM have been developing it, and governments all over the world have been happily rolling it out, there haven't been many rules or a framework in place for how it is used. In Britain, they've actually been experimenting with facial recognition zones, even putting up signs alerting you to the fact that you're about to enter one, which seems polite. But watch what happens when one man decided he didn't actually want his face scanned.
This man didn't want to be caught by the police cameras, so he covered his face. They stopped him, they photographed him anyway, an argument followed.
What's your suspicion?
The fact that they walked past.
I would do the same. I would do the same.
So I walked past like that. It's a cold day as well. As I've done that, the police officers asked me to come to him, so I put this back up. I said to them, I've got a man £90 fine. There you go, look at that. Thanks, £90. Well done.
Yeah, that Guy Ritchie character was rightly mad about that. And incidentally, if you are not British, you're looking at that man, then at me, and wondering how we both came from the same island. Let me quickly explain. British people come in two variations: so emotionally stunted that they're practically comatose, and cheerfully telling large groups of policemen to fuck off and do one if you're going to take a photo of me face. There's absolutely nothing in between the two. And the UK's by no means alone in building out the system. Australia is investing heavily in a national facial biometric system called The Capability, which sounds like the name of a Netflix original movie, although that's actually perfect. If you want people to notice it, think, oh, that seems interesting, and then forget it ever existed. And you don't have to imagine what this technology would look like in the hands of an authoritarian government, because China is unsurprisingly embracing it in a big way.
We can match every face with an ID card and trace all your movements back 1 week in time. We can match your face with your car, match you with your relatives, and the people you're in touch with. With enough cameras, we can know who you frequently meet.
That is a terrifying level of surveillance. Imagine the Eye of Sauron, but instead of scouring Middle-earth with a One Ring, he was just really into knowing where all his orcs like to go to dinner. And some state-funded developers in China seem weirdly oblivious to just how sinister their projects sound.
Skynet, what is that?
The Terminator is a favorite film of our founder. So they use the same name, but they want to put something good into the system.